Hey guys, and welcome to a showdown featuring myself under the guise of Melon Lord up against Timbo Slice. And it is going to be the High Elves up against the Lizardmen, two age-old allies going against each other. Obviously, part of the Old One's plan has changed. Now, nothing quite sums up Total War Warhammer than a big fire-breathing dragon causing carnage all across the battlefield. So we have gone for a build which requires two of them. We'll get to them in just a second. For our main battle line, we are going to have spearmen dotted all the way along. Cheap, cheerful here just to absorb enemy damage and also make our battle line as wide as possible, because in the secondary line is where our damage dealers are hidden. We have two units of the Sword Masters of Hoeth, massive anti-infantry sword-wielding maniacs. Unfortunately, they are rather susceptible to being shot at and obliterated by cavalry charges, artillery pieces and all sorts of nonsense. So we're going to be trying to sneak them in where possible, and we've got two gigantic dragons to form a bit of a distraction as they do advance. We also have one unit of the Line Chariots of Therese, one of my favourite chariots in the game, heavy-hitting, armour-piercing anti-infantry, really good up against the Lizardmen. They can break the back of a Saurus front line if you get a decent rear charge. We also have a couple of units of Illyrian Reavers just on the flanks to try and counter-skirmish Chameleon Skinks, and some Rangers in that centre pocket. Before our Lord here, as well as our mighty Star Dragon pet, so we have a Star Dragon on the right-hand side, whose breath attack is fantastic at taking down single entity targets and characters, and on the left we have an Archmage, of course, of Life Magic, coming in with two gigantic dragons, as well as a load of elite infantry. We're certainly going to need some healing. So Sirius is going to be coming in with Earthblood, as well as Flesh to Stone, and a mighty regrowth with, of course, Arcane Conduit and Book of Hoeth. So a nice, solid, compact build. Now for my opponent up in the skies, he is going to meet us with the Pohawks Sentinels, regiment of renowned Pterodon Riders who have a horrifically powerful rock drop, very good at deleting enemy range. Apart from that, the main battle line is going to be made of Saurus Warriors with spears, as well as the basic ones, and some Star Chamber Guardians dotted all the way along. Star Chamber Guardians in particular, fearsome foes indeed, and if they can surround a dragon, they will pull it apart, cleaving big old scales and chunks of flesh away with those scary halberds. In the secondary line, he has a ton of skink cohorts with javelins. I'm a big fan of him placing them in the secondary line. It allows them to Kobe their javelins up and over, poison and slow down my troops, allowing the Saurus to punch a little bit above their weight. He has double artillery piece in the form of a Bastiladon with solar engine, one on this flank, and as well as a basic Stegodon on the other side, a unit I don't see terribly often, but it is very powerful, and that bolt thrower on top is pretty damn accurate. Leading the forces, we do have the mighty Gorok, and he's going to be snuggling up inside the Star Chamber Guardians, and that's pretty scary stuff, because his Mace of Ulmak, there we go, if I can pronounce that correctly, makes him an absolute world beater, but the Shield of Eons will increase the Temple Guard's armour by 60, which is certainly very scary, and you can use Stand Your Ground, as well as the Rock of Itza, to turn these guys into an unbreakable wall, which my elves will crash upon. He also has a Skink Priest of Beasts coming in with a decent amount of spells, actually. Wyson's Wild Farm, Flock of Doom, Amber Spear, and the Manticore Summon. So without further ado, let's get this battle underway. And as you can see, we're instantly going to drive into the enemy lines with these line chariots. There's not too much to stop us. No real fast mobility on my opponent's build, so we are going to simply walk in, do some lovely damage to the Saurus Warriors before hitting the Skink cohort here. Big breath attack is going to be going down the line on the Saurus Warriors, just trying to get some early damage to help our Spearmen out. Good target priority by my opponent so far, but still on with Solar Engine, clobbering some of those Sword Masters on the approach, already taking a bit of a beating, and that is one of the problems that they of course suffer from. Mixture of Spearmen and Rangers are about to get clobbered to death by Star Chamber Guardians as well as Gorok, but elsewhere the battle isn't going terribly well either for us. Spearmen are driving in to try and shut down the Stegodon as Sword Masters get to a nice area, and we do drop an Earthblood down to heal up the Sword Masters before going to try and snipe the Bastiladon. But you can see the Archmage is taking huge damage up in the sky due to the Skink cohort javelins, and a Manticore Summon has come into place. All of a sudden the Archmage in dangerous territory, but a glorious breath attack into the back of the Star Chamber Guardians does really weaken them, but they do have all those buffs active. Up in the skies, that Manticore is doing a huge work on our Archmage. A regrowth has gone down, as well as a Flesh of Stone, and the Star Dragon has returned in an attempt to deal. But even so, the Archmage, despite all these huge buffs going down, is wavering. But now we have managed to rampage that Manticore and should be able to deal with it for the most part. In the centre, we are being crumped, which is expected, but on the right-hand side, the Sword Masters are doing a fantastic job driving back Saurus, cleaving them asunder with those mighty weapons. as well as a nice play of the Illyrian Reavers and Chariots, darting into the back of this formation, and it looks like we're going to be able to crumple the right-hand flank of the Lizardmen force, and the left-hand flank's not going terrible either. We're mopping up skink cohorts in the back with our Illyrian Reavers, and the Swordmasters are 2v1ing rather happily up against Saurus Spears and Saurus Warriors. You see already up to 63 kills and doing decent work. We're using the mobility of our build at this point with the double dragon to try and force off the Bastillodon. Luckily for me, there's a big scary blob of Star Chamber Guardians and Gorok, but I don't really have to fight them if I don't want to. At least not with my particularly powerful and expensive units. We're going to pop over here, assassinate this Bastillodon before simply flying away up into the skies and ignoring that the Star Chamber Guardians even exist. Swordmasters, however, have butchered this right-hand flank, and now we're going to be using the Illyrian Reavers just to chase off all these troops and get some lovely value. You can see we're doing the same in the distance, and in come the Lion Chariots to harass the Star Chamber Guardians, simply drive through them and help support these Spearmen, and allow my dragons to get up in the air and escape, although the Archmage has taken massive damage so far during this game. The Polearch Sentinels need to get a little bit more active for my opponent here, get in the mix and maybe drop some rock drops down. We are coming in with the double breath attack on the Stegodon. This is scary stuff, and all of a sudden, he's lost about a third of his health. Looks like the Saurus Spears were clobbered as well. Lion Chariots of Trays mopping up this left-hand side, freeing up the Swordmasters to start collapsing in the central portion. So we managed to win both flanks and lose the centre, but that is absolutely fine by me, as now the Archmage and Star Dragon going for that double assassination attempt once again on a large dino, this time the Stegodon, and we are butchering it. I'm a big fan of Stegodons. I've picked them up in recent weeks quite a lot, but they certainly don't want to go toe-to-toe with double Star Dragon as well as Swordmaster support here. Looks like Javelins are coming down, consistently trying to put pressure on the Archmage, and they've done a decent job getting some nice value there. And it looks like we are going to be seeing a second Feral Manticore summon coming down, as the Illyrian Reavers do crash once more into the Star Chamber Guardians. Are holding relatively firm, despite the fact they are surrounded by 2 units of Swordmasters, as well as Spearmen, Chariots. Illyrian Reaver pressure, they're doing a fantastic job. This time we are a little bit more prepared for Manticore Summon, trying to take him in the air once more with our double dragon. He's decided to land inside the Star Chamber Guardians, which is a really good idea because it forces my dragons to come down to their level, but unfortunately they are terrified off, having only 11 models remaining. They are slowly getting a master class lesson in fighting by the Swordmasters here, and that Feral Manticore does indeed shatter. Gorok is relatively the only strong position left for the Lizardmen forces at this point, and it's pretty much game over. However, Gorok is disgustingly tanky when his buffs are active. I've charged him before with a Mighty Dragon, and it does absolutely 0 damage, so instead we're just going to snipe out everything else from the build, focus down at these Pterodon Riders as well as that Skink Priest. Once they're off the field, we can simply, everyone jump on top of Gorok and beat the crap out of him. In the distance, Illyrian Reavers are returning from chasing off and shattering some skink cohorts, and it looks like Gorok is going to decide, you know what, not today, I'm going to retreat, fall back, and rethink my battle plans. But very well played to my opponent. Super fun game, did some massive scary damage, and nearly actually clutched at the beginning of that Manticore play. If he had killed the Archmage of Life, I would have been in huge trouble. So well played to Timbo Slice. We'll break down the builds in just a second, but if you did enjoy, feel free to hit that big old fat thumbs up button, and subscribe if you haven't already for more Total War Warhammer content. We have videos every single day, as well as the streams a couple of times a week. If you want to support the channel in any other way, there are links down below in the description to my Patreon, as well as my Discord, where you can drop off submission replays to be featured up on the channel. Anyway, let's have a little look at the build. So, Timber Slice, really fun build all around. I actually really like the combination of Gorok and the Star Chamber Guardians. You can see they got 7,000 damage dealt, but not the best damage value, and that's because they suffered a little bit from not being able to chase anything, at least anything of value. The only stuff they could catch was cheap and cheerful units, or some Swordmasters who are designed to kill units such as the Star Chamber Guardians. So a little bit of a rough start there. And I like this idea. I'm certainly going to try it myself a little bit of bringing these two characters. You see Gorok as well struggling to get that value. But I think in a matchup against High Elves, they have so many fast-moving heavy hitters, it's probably not worth it unless you've gone for a really defensive build, a little bit tighter, hiding the Bastillodon and Stegodon right next to them. So all my heavy hitters, if I want to assassinate the enemy range, have to swoop in close to these anti-large maniacs. But anyway, apart from that, Skink Priest, some really clutch Manticore summons at different points, and the Saurus across the board struggled a little bit. Of course, they were going to beat Spearmen as well as Rangers, but we would charge them in the back constantly with those Chariots and Reavers, and eventually managed to break them off. Solar Engine as well, doing some pretty decent work though, up to nearly 1,000 damage value. Stegodon doing fantastic, 1,500 and gaining a Chevron. Polearch Sentinels didn't do too bad. I think they needed to float over and do their rock drop, but apart from that, really good game all round. Always happy to face Timbo Slice. He was a real nice guy as well in the chat. So, for my own build, I have spoken quite a lot before about the Archmage and why I'm a big fan of them. I know some people don't like them because they can overcast and hurt themselves, but on a dragon, she was a mighty foe indeed. 9.7k damage dealt and 1,800 damage value with still about half health. I did have to support her an insane amount with regrowths and earthbloods and stuff just to keep her fighting, but as you can see, the rest of the build isn't too beat up. Yes, the spearmen did go down without much of a fight, as well as the rangers, but all the heavy hitters are still relatively healthy. Star Dragon pretty much full health, 2.6k damage value without losing any health is absolutely insane. 13,000 damage dealt. Apart from that, Swordmaster's actually performing for once, which is absolutely glorious to see, and this is a matchup where they can do well if they don't get stomped down by gigantic dinosaurs, and that's where the dragons came into play to try and counteract them where possible. As we can see, 1,300 damage value here, 1,400, 9k damage dealt, and 12k, but more importantly, 135 and 88 kills, clearing a ton of my enemy's army and just pushing them away, driving them off, allowing the Illyrian Reavers to then just feast happily, getting a huge amount of kills between them, mainly chasing down troops. And the secret MVP here, or maybe the Star Dragon for coming and saving the Archmage, but if there's a other notice, I would say the Lion Chariots of Cherace, gaining a chevron, 131 kills, pretty decent damage dealt and damage value. But the real big key moment for them here was breaking the Saurus Warriors' thunderous charges into the rear, breaking those troops, allowing the Illyrian Reavers to clear them up before circling it round once more, and again, leaving at pretty much full health. Anyway guys, hope you enjoyed. Until next time, peace, peace, and as always, stay awesome.